American Giant makes great clothing, sweatshirts, jeans, and more right here in the U.S. Visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order with code STAPLE20. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com, code STAPLE20.
At Arizona State University, we've made online education better, smarter, and more personalized so you can go further in your aspiring field.
I decided to pursue medicine once I realized that ASU did have the online program for biological sciences. You're still required to learn the same curriculum. You're still being tested on the same content that anyone would be tested on in person. The comprehensiveness of the program prepared me so well for medical school.
Explore over 300 programs at asuonline.asu.edu.
If you have experienced abuse and you have come through it and you have stopped the cycle and you are still looking for something different, you have a tremendous level of courage. Because I think one of the biggest lies that sticks us is if we were abused, if we experienced some painful trauma, then there must be some way in which we brought it on, some way in which we must be wrong. And I've seen the exact opposite. I've seen that the people that have experienced abuse and who are still here and are still looking for a solution, still looking for something different, have immense courage and immense strength.
Welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast, brought to you by AmpCoil. I'm your host, Freddie Kimmel, and on this show we discuss the common thread survivors share after walking through the fire, the practitioners making a difference, and the treatment modalities that deliver healing back into the hands of the people who need it most. Witness the inspiration we gain by navigating the human experience with grace, humility, and a healthy dose of mistakes. Because part of being human is being beautifully broken. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Beautifully Broken podcast. We have a very special guest today, Dain here. Dain, welcome to the podcast.
Hey, Freddie, thanks for having me.
Oh, it's a true honor. I want to jump in, and if you could just give our audience a little bit of information on it, exactly it is what you do.
I do something called Access Consciousness. I've been part of co-creating it for the last 19 years, and basically it's a way of changing anything in your life you want to change. And the way that works is the only time we create a difficulty in our lives is when we function from less than the awareness we actually have. So what this does is bring awareness back to every area of our lives, and then the difficulties start melting away, going away, changing.
They wax and wane. Is that sort of one of those things where you sort of bring attention to something and it's where you're going to shine your light at that specific time that you're going to be able to shift something if we truly want to look at it?
Well, that's the thing is a lot of the difficulties we have in our lives, from physical problems to emotional, are based on something that occurred earlier in life that we haven't dealt with yet. And, that's a bit of a oversimplification. And yet the premise still holds that it's only the unconsciousness and anti-consciousness. And unconsciousness is our unawareness. Anti-consciousness is where we fight against our awareness. Those are the only times we create a difficulty in our lives. And so let's just face it. From my point of view, access consciousness is a different set of tools that actually work in the reality we live in to change shit. That's it.
Yeah, I'm familiar with the idea that a majority of our programming, if I'm going to go down the Bruce Lipton road of biology of belief, or that we pick up that major programming system, I think it's between 3 and 7 years old. Is that close?
I would say absolutely, and it can be at any other point also. It's just, but if we can recognize that, if we can recognize the awareness that our point of view and the points of view that we take and the points of view we hold on to create our reality. Reality doesn't create our point of view. If we can look from that awareness, then if we can get to the points of view we have that are underneath something, and most of them are not logical, which is where the confusion comes in, because we assume that our points of view are logical, our creation of something is logical. Most of it's not. It's your insane mind where all the answers to the limitations live. And so what I found is accessing somebody's totally illogical brain is where we can actually get the awareness that will set us free.
That voice in the body that says, I know, somewhere in there, right?
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And our body always knows whether we do or not. And that's the funny part, is we're imposing we're imposing our points of view on the body, and the body's like, okay, well, let me show you what your points of view are. And then we go along for the ride and we're like, darn body, what are you doing? And your body's like, what you told me to with your point of view, you know? So it's a different way of looking at things, but also we have about 8,000 tools to change things in Access. And so because what I've seen is once somebody is finally willing to make a choice to go down a different road, a road of, okay, I'm going to become aware of what's actually underneath this, not just try to cover up the symptoms. Once they make that choice, then what's really required is some different tools, some friggin' cutting edge tools that are beyond the reality we've been living to get to unlocking some of this stuff.
Dain, before we jump in to your system and the tools that you use, so typically, let's say you're working your way through your 100 years on the planet, if we're really lucky, and you start to find life feels more of like pushing a boulder up a hill. You've got a couple options right now, right? We could take on drug abuse, or we could go seek out a community in a group and kind of fall into somebody else's ideology. We could also you could go find a therapist and try to work through some of these issues. What do you think the major limitations are with the people tools have access to right now?
That they don't go far enough. They don't address the energy of what's actually going on, because we have this common delusion we all call reality. And what we found is reality gets created wherever two or more people align and agree on a point of view about what's real. If you say this is real and somebody else says, yeah, that's real, well, guess what? We've just created a reality. And so what Access does is we're not just sort of functioning from the outside edges of the box of this reality. We're busting the box so we can look from a place beyond this reality. And I don't mean that from a space of arrogance. I really mean it from a space of humility, where we should all have we should all have access to the possibilities that occur if we didn't grow up in a limited reality, which we all have. We've all grown up in the box called this reality. And so what Access is really about is, okay, if you were looking from beyond the box, like truly functioning from beyond the box, and had the ability to change things from there, then what would be possible?
Yeah, what would be possible? So listen, we could wax on that for in the next couple hours. So let's say somebody connects with you and they're looking to access a different level of consciousness. Where does someone start?
There are so many levels of entry. I mean, Access, we're in 176 countries around the world right now. I mean, if you go to my YouTube channel alone, I've got over 300 videos there with free tools, free ways to, and they're 5 or 6 minute videos, most of them. Some of them are a little longer, but it's a tool that I found that helps a particular area of life. And I'm like, here's a tool, use this. Here's another tool, use this. Well, at this point, they're over 300. Here's a tool, use it. That's one place. We have a lot of facilitators of Access who also have all kinds of free stuff online. Books, we have online courses, we have live courses. But it also depends, because each of us is different. Each of us has a different target. And there are certain people that are like, hey, what I would like is I'd actually like to become totally conscious. I'd like to become, if we call it self-actualized, although I believe that's a bit of a limitation, because there's probably more than what we consider self-actualization. But if then I would say, hey, then you want to do the Access Consciousness classes. We have this format for doing the classes and moving on in that way. So for me, it really is up to the individual. And the other thing is I acknowledge to people is, when you hear about something, you're like, yes, that. And that's what we really need to learn to follow is that knowing to get us to the target, the place we're looking to get.
So let's say I come to you, and do you work with people one-on-one, or is this primarily people are taken through an academy or a school?
Well, I do work with people one-on-one, but at the beginning, I would say you get a far greater result working with another facilitator of Access Consciousness. Plus, they charge a lot less than I do.
That's fair.
At this point, with the busyness in my schedule, to find an hour of free time is almost impossible. But also we have classes that facilitators deliver around the world. We have this 1-day class called Access Consciousness Bars, which literally saved my life 19 years ago. I'm one of the few people on the planet that knows what literally means.
Yeah.
I'm just kidding about that. That's just a personal thing. Where somebody says, literally, there were a billion of them. And I'm like, that's not literally. Okay. Anyway.
I have a very, very good friend, Jessa, and she calls people out all the time. She's like, man, these people overuse that word literally.
That's so true. And for me, it's just kind of a joke at this point. But so that's a beginning place. So we have facilitators around the world that do this amazing work. And so once again, we have these classes. There's this class called Access Consciousness Bars. It's a 1-day class. You learn this light touch technique on the head, and we've done studies and found that it dynamically diminishes stress, dynamically diminishes anxiety, creates better sleep. Also, we did a brainwave study, found that it changes brainwaves really dynamically, so dynamically that the guy that did the study, he wasn't going to be doing a study. He studied 2 people that were not me and Gary, the founders or creators of Access, if you will, 2 people that were practitioners of it, and saw the brainwave change that it created in an hour and went, I want to study this. I've never seen anything like this. So that's one of the tools I'm talking about is Access Consciousness Bars. And what it does is I literally went in to have it. Well, actually I had a session 19 years ago, and I was depressed and suicidal. I was going to end my life if things didn't change. And I gave the universe 6 months. An hour and 15 minutes later, I walk out of this session totally full of gratitude, with a sense of the possibility for future and the sense that everything was going to be okay. And I was like, whoa. And I had not had that in years. So for a certain type of person, that is definitely a great place to start. And it doesn't have to be in a class. There are people that deliver bar sessions around the world too. Part of the reason of speaking about these things for me, though, is I want to let people know there are resources out there. There are ways of changing things out there. And whether it's access or not, doesn't matter to me, but know that there are things out there that are pushing the boundaries or beyond the edges of reality as we know it. And those are the things that are usually going to change something if everything else you've tried hasn't worked.
Can you tell me, for you, what a shift in reality, how that took you from a state of being suicidal to a state of gratitude specifically?
I wish I could tell you. It's part of the process called bars. So let me tell you how this worked, okay?
Yeah,
I
no, do
literally
start
2
there.
weeks. Okay. I'm a seeker, okay? So I had been doing every technique I could find, from psychology to metaphysics to spirituality to different types of eating. And, I'm also a chiropractor, so I was exposed to the physical, emotional end of the spectrum, and tried everything and all I really wanted was to be happy and change the sense of having a possibility for future. And when none of it worked, when I got happy for 3 days, I'd go to a weekend workshop. And by the time Wednesday rolled around after this weekend, I go to the weekend workshop, go, oh my God, yes, I'm finally happy. And by Wednesday, I was buried in the same crap I had been living with. And finally, after one of those weekend workshops, I got to a point and I went, enough. Either my life truly changes or I'm out of here. Universe, you got 6 months. And 2 weeks later, I went and because I saw an ad for Access in the paper, and it said, all of life comes to me with ease and joy and glory. And I was furious. I was like, my life is pain, suffering, and glory. You have no idea what my life is. How dare you put this in the paper? Anyway, I called her. And so she comes to my chiropractic office. I lie down. She puts her hands on my head. And I'm thinking nothing in particular other than, yeah, this probably won't work either. And after about 3 or 4 minutes, this energy starts going through my body, and it feels like somebody is just like pouring liquid love, light, peace, gratitude, joy. And I'm like, oh, this is cool. And then she moves her hands to another place, and I start giggling like a little kid. I'm like, and I giggled. She moved her hands to all these different places. I didn't know what they were. She didn't tell me. She's like, do you want me to tell you, or do you want me to just start? I'm like, just start. And an hour and 15 minutes later, after giggling for an hour and 15 minutes with this lady I'd never met, I woke up. I well, I opened my eyes and I remember looking out at the clouds going, has it always been this beautiful here? Oh my God, if it feels this way, I'm in. So I have no idea what she did. And so I think that's part of the beauty of it. That's part of the miracle of it from my point of view is I couldn't explain what she did. I couldn't explain how she did it. I just know that it happened. But the other thing that she did was she gave me a tool to use. We started getting together once a week and doing this bars thing. And she gave me a tool to use from the time I saw her till the next time I would see her. And when the universe wanted to cave back in on my head after doing this, I would use one of those tools and it would expand back out again. And I was like, holy cow, I've not only found something that literally changed my life and my point of view about reality, but when all the stuff wants to come back in and eat me, I can push it away now or get rid of it, basically, not even push it away. And that was something that I'd never had before.
It's incredible. I mean, so you obviously you went through the experience, you were a believer, and then how did you take this to the next level to make it accessible to so many people?
Well, I just started doing it. I mean, what I started doing, and this is also funny, is I took, I was doing sessions with her once a week. And like I said, I was getting bars and I was doing chiropractic on her for receiving the bars. And she would give me a tool and she would give me these tools each week. And I was like, whoa, every time she gives me one of these, it's exactly what I need and it changes something. And then I would use that tool the following week. So I got really good at using one tool. And then a couple months later, I did the first class and learned how to do bars on other people. And I took this other class called the Foundation. And in that book called the Foundation, which was, I think it was a 4-day class at the time, but in there, I felt like somebody had put into words everything I'd always known, but I didn't know how to put into words. And I was like leafing through this thing going, oh my God, yes, yes, yes. And it was all these things that I'd never heard about or I'd heard about in one way, but this is putting it a different way that gave me clarity. And I felt like somebody had written a manual about how the universe works, like how the universe actually works, not the crap that and I say that, not the crap that because I think a lot of us have been in this place where we really wanted something to be different than everything else that was around us, or we really knew there should be something different possible. And I was reading through this book going, wow, somebody put all of this in a friggin' book. And after that 4-day class, I felt like my life started on a rocket ship and just kept going.
Hmm.
And but I also want to say, a lot of people go, yeah, after this everything was perfect and everything was up, and I'm like, I think anybody who tells us that is delusional or lying. What I've noticed is the general level of my life has gone up and up and up, and yet it'll go down. We all have bad days, but what happens is the down days are not nearly as down, and the highs just keep getting higher and higher and higher. And so it's not like a manic kind of thing. It's more like a sense of space and peace and joy that becomes available.
Yeah, I really want to get out and try this. So obviously you mentioned there's some component of this. This is body work. So it's accessing emotions through certain points in the body, moving energy that's probably a little bit stuck. Are there pillars of the modality in there besides the body work?
Yeah, and the it's I don't even know if I could call that part of it body work because it's this thing in
Sure.
the head, but let's go with that.
Touch. Yeah.
Yeah, like it's more like an energetic thing that starts unlocking receiving in your body. And so there's that. That's the first class, which is bars.
Is it fair to
Then the
say
next,
it's similar to an Reiki or a cranial sacral type?
it would be fair to try to compare it, but it doesn't compare. I mean, if you
Okay.
took craniosacral, added Reiki on steroids from a unicorn that was birthed from a dragon in some other dimension that was really conscious, sort of. And I know I'm being kind of facetious because there really isn't a way to, and we get that all the time. Is it like Reiki? It's like, well, no, and yes, it is both. And because I think there's an element of truth in everything that actually works, and craniosacral is phenomenal. Reiki is phenomenal. And so please don't think in any way that I'm knocking that. I'm not at all. This is
Well, they
just,
don't have a unicorn and they don't have a dragon in there.
exactly. Neither do we, but I'm really looking for one. So in that sense, I would say it's like this. It's like upgrading your operating system, defragging your hard drive, and getting a brand new CPU and monitor all at the same time. Because basically, it just clears the junk out of your head, and it does it in a way that nothing I've ever seen does before. And so, like I said, we have scientific evidence of certain parts of what it does or the effects of it. We still have no idea how. We just know that it works. And then, so that's the first, if you wanted to take a class, that's a 1 day class. And then the next class after that
And
is,
what's the class called again?
that class is called Access Consciousness Bars.
Access Consciousness Bars.
Yep,
Beautiful.
BARS. And the reason it's called bars is because these things look like energetic bars going through your head.
Okay.
Apparently, I've never seen them, but that's what people say. So, and then the next class is Foundation, which is 4 days. And that's really for somebody who's looking to change the foundation of limitation that was their life into something different. And at the same time, we have a ton of classes like Relationship Done Different. We have classes on Return of the Gentleman. We have classes on how to change a money situation. So it works on two levels. It works on the level of, I've got a problem, I want to change it. Works really dynamically for that. And it also works for those people who were like, you know what, I know there's something different possible. And that's what I desire, is to actually have that different reality in that different world. And so it works on both the same tools. It just depends on how you want to apply them.
I know as you're speaking about this, I can see how many people this would benefit. And specifically, a lot of the people that I have an opportunity to connect with across the country, people are often, struggling with some of these mystery diseases, Lyme, chronic autoimmunity, rheumatoid arthritis. And the real challenge for people sometimes is getting stuck in your own story. And it's so easy to identify with that. I'm a sick person. I know how to play this role. You must have seen people attached to this story come through your program.
Absolutely. Dynamically. And what I've seen is, I would say probably about 90%, maybe more, are actually willing to see. Because what I've seen is the identification with the story, exactly as you said, gives somebody this identity, and there's some value in that story. And yet, what I've seen is when people actually start to realize that, wait a minute, there's another possibility over here that actually sounds like a lot more fun. And I can actually get there, because that I think is the difference, where somebody may want to let the story go, but they don't know how to get there. Or they want to let the condition go, of course, but they don't know how to get there. And so when they see that it's actually possible to get there, and it's not impossible, it's not going to kill them to get there. They don't have to get rid of everything they own and everything they are. In fact, all they really do is enhance who they really are. That's when it's like, I've seen people be willing to let the story go. And you're so right. So many people are so vested in that story. But if you look at it, it's like well, let's just put it this way. There's all kinds of reasons for those stories going on.
Yeah.
And though there are common themes, we need to find out what it is for each person. Because to say that, even if two people are living next to each other or in the same place or whatever, and they have a similar thing, it's still going to be two different stories in some way about what's going on. So what I'm interested in is finding out that person's story. How do we address the specifics of that to change it? And at the same time, how do we sort of wholesale go through and change some of the biggest limiting points of view that stick all of us?
Yeah. I'm just spinning in my head right now. You must have a lot of people go and do this 1 day class or the 4 day workshop, and then they must want to bring their partner in.
Oh, yes.
After they've experienced a shift. I mean, how do you go through this one side of the Oreo cookie?
Well, yeah, exactly. Yeah. And it's so true. And we have so many people that do. It's funny. We had one lady who came, and she was highly successful already in her job, and then later in her business. And she had been doing Access for about 3 years. And one day her husband showed up in class, and it was a class Gary Douglas, the founder, was delivering. My business partner, he was delivering this class, and the wife brought the husband up to meet Gary, and he's like, "Hi, so why did you decide to come to Access?" He said, "Well, I have to tell you, actually, we started having sex again, and it's the best sex I've ever had. And I wanted to find out what she was doing. I'm like, well, whatever it takes, but when your partner starts getting happier, you want to find out what that is so you can actually support it. And yet on the other side, if we look, we realize there are a lot of people that have these conditions that you spoke about, that a lot of times their partner or their family or whomever is not actually happy for their happiness. And that, of course, is a different story. And it's also a different pathway to undo it. But even that is changeable.
Yeah. So people have the 1-day class, they have the 4-day workshop. Is there a deeper dive than that?
Oh, goodness. Yes. Yes. How deep would you like to go? Because we have, there are another class that I facilitate called the energetic synthesis of being, that's about energetically giving you access to all the parts of you you've lost. There's one where people actually learn to do a lot of this in the bars. You not only receive the bars, but you actually learn how to give it, and you learn how to do it, and you could actually go and do it on other people after that. And then there's this other level at which we show people how to work primarily with the energy, not just the bars points, work energetically with people's bodies. And then we have a 7-day advanced intensive. So there's a lot beyond that also. And once again, it's all determined by what does the person desire. Our point of view in Access is come when you want, leave when you want. And this is one of the other things, our tagline is empowering you to know that you know. And I think if we can start to get people to acknowledge that they do know, and acknowledge to people like, look, where have you known not to do something and you did it? Well, that's your knowing. And where have you done something that everybody said you shouldn't do that worked out great? That's your knowing also. We can recognize that we know, and we know what's appropriate for us. We know when it's time. We know when to do something. We know when not to. We start to have a different relationship with reality in our world, where it's no longer about who's got the answer outside of us. It's like, okay, what do I know? And who can help me access that? No pun intended. But really, who can help me access more of what I already know, and who can contribute to more of that?
Yeah, it also seems like this would be an incredible tool for parents out there in the family unit. Why do we need to wait till we're 47 years old, divorced, in a horrible relationship, addicted to a substance to go get help?
Exactly. I love that question. That is so true and so brilliantly put. And it's interesting because what we see with parents who have what we call them access parents, parents of children, and the parents do classes and the kids come too. What we've seen with the kids when their parents do access for any length of time, a year, 2 years, something like that, is their kids become the leaders in their peer groups, become the leaders in school. They become the leaders on their sports teams. I mean, because what we inherently do with all of what we do in access is to get people out of judgment, out of the idea of right and wrong, give them the awareness that they know, give them the awareness that choice creates, and then show them how to deal with the situations of life and not be buried by it, but actually move forward through it and change it, and not be stuck anymore with anything. And kids, of course, take it and do it instantly. And it's amazing to watch how quickly they will receive something and how slowly we adults are. We've had kids send us notes in class where they're in class and there are a bunch of adults around, and they literally write us notes and they bring it up and they go, we have a class just for kids? These adults are slow, and I'm like, man, that's something we all had access to until we started becoming adult, ADOLT, and trying to make the reality around us as real as we have and as solid so that it's not changeable. And what we require is the ability to make reality changeable again.
Why does the human brain long for that stability and compartmentalize? And we have this black and white world where we know how everything operates.
Yes.
What is that driven from?
Well, I would say that's part of the brain's design for self-preservation. And the difficulty is, this thing I said at the very beginning, your point of view creates your reality. Reality doesn't create your point of view. If you're focused on self-preservation, That's one point of view, but all it's about is keeping your body alive. It's not about expansion into possibilities. It's not about what else is possible, which, by the way, is one of the access tools. What else is possible? One of the big things about access is ask questions. What else is possible? How does it get any better than this? Ask what's right about this I'm not getting in a situation you think is wrong, or what's right about me I'm not getting when you think you're wrong. All of these things start to open doors that didn't exist before you asked the question. But that idea of our brain, our brain's job is basically to keep our body alive. That's it. And it does it is remarkable at doing so. The difficulty especially comes though when you have a story that's playing, because the brain doesn't know how to deal with energies that are not resolved in the moment. And so what it tends to do is it tends to lock them away where you can't find them, because it goes, oh, well, this trauma you experienced, this pain, that was really intense for us and really intense for your body. So, and you haven't found a way to deal with it. So I'm just going to put it over here. I'm going to put some walls around it. I'm going to put some concrete walls around that so we don't have to access that anymore. And therefore, I'm doing my job of keeping you alive. The problem with that is alive and thrive are not necessarily the same thing. And so now we've got all this stuff stuck with crappy concrete patchwork behind all these walls, and we're living our life trying to be happy. We're living our life trying to act like those energies aren't there. But the difficulty is any energy you put behind a wall, it's still there because it's an energy. It's just behind an energetic wall. So our energy goes into holding in place the wall, but that energy is still always there. And so what I found is the only way to do it is to finally get present with it and go, look, I'll look at this no matter what it looks like, no matter what it takes, and be willing to look behind the wall and deal with that, which, is what we do in access, at least, and hopefully everywhere. And then to allow whatever that energy is to become present, and then change all the lies around that so that we can become unstuck. And, one example is, well, okay, maybe we can do an example later if you want.
Give me the example. I'm on this train with you right now.
Well, okay. So I'll use myself as one part of this example. When I was a kid, I experienced molestation. I was molested by two different people, but at the same time, I experienced some very intense physical abuse. I was beaten. My little naked body was beaten with belts by a circle of women standing over me. And they were hitting me in the penis as many times as they could because they wanted me to know how evil men were. And so what does my brain do with that? Well, my brain walled all that energy off so I didn't have to deal with it, but I was extremely unhappy. That's part of the reason why I was at the place where I wanted to end my life. And no matter what I would do to change something, there was this haunting specter that there was always something wrong. Well, once I got to access and started working with Gary, the founder, he started asking me questions that would point to that energy. And I started being able to get in touch with it, but not from the trauma and the drama, but from sort of an observational point of view. And then we have this way we call it a clearing statement, going back to the point of creation of wherever the fixed points of view were locked in, and the walls started coming down. Well, prior to that, my back used to hurt. And this is so funny being a chiropractor, right? Having your back hurt all the time.
You're the chiropractor with the bad back. That's some bullshit right there.
I know, seriously, right? You're like, yeah, I trust that guy. I really want to go see him for a session. And as we started unlocking this, what happened was that thing about what our brain does is that thing that what our brain does is it's devoted to self-preservation, but self in this case primarily involves the body. And so it did its job, but I never got free of the energy there. I never was able to unlock the lies that were involved. I never saw the strength that I had. One of the things for me, and I love the title of your podcast, Beautifully Broken, because for me, one of the things, because have worked a lot with people who've experienced abuse. And one of the things I say to them is, look, if you have experienced abuse and you have come through it and you have stopped the cycle and you are still looking for something different and being willing to be a different person in the world, you have a tremendous level of courage. Because I think and a tremendous level of strength. Because I think one of the biggest lies that sticks us is if we were abused, if we experienced some painful trauma, then there must be some way in which we brought it on, some way in which we must be wrong. And I've seen the exact opposite. I've seen that the people that have experienced abuse and who are still here and are still looking for a solution, still looking for something different, have immense courage and immense strength. So, on that note, in looking at this, see, our brain is also not designed to tell us what's true about us and for us.
Mm-hmm.
It once again, it's devoted to survival. So if it can put you in a loop of fear to make sure that you are always looking out for the thing that could kill you, then the brain is doing its job. Well, we have ways of changing that too. But if we can recognize, wow, my brain is doing its job, but I'm not sure that I want it to be solely in charge of that job anymore. What can I do to change this stuff? But we also have to recognize if we change the energies, the energetics of the stuff behind the wall, if we can get through the lies, like for example, the lie that you're weak, the lie that it was personal, the lie that you were wrong, if we can get through the lies and undo that, and then undo the underlying energy that sticks the thing, then your brain no longer has to keep you in a loop pointing to that to make sure you avoid it. And now your life no longer becomes about avoiding your past. It becomes about creating your present and creating your future.
Yeah, the idea that you did something wrong to have women standing over there, you whipping your penis with a belt. I
Yeah.
mean, just to release that.
Yeah.
Actually, you
Yeah.
were brave for making it through. You did nothing wrong. And then how do you move forward? Is that you've released all those triggers for yourself?
I'd say I've released, what I would say is, if, you know, the most honest assessment I would say is probably about 99% at this point, and that
Yeah.
occurred many, many years ago.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's certain things that I still find have this little thread, but it's not like a Mack truck hitting me in the face anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And Gary and I did a lot of work on abuse several years ago. And the reason I bring up abuse, because that has an intensity of energy that sometimes later in life shows up as Lyme disease, shows up as cancer. And it's not just abuse as we know it, though. This is the thing. We have lots of definitions for what is abuse and what isn't. And, I used to go, Gary'd say, have you experienced abuse? I'd be like, nah, because I thought if you were the victim, quote unquote, of abuse, then you must be living on Skid Row in a box, but I had a house and I was doing okay. And I had somewhat successful relationships and, that sort of thing. So I think we also have these weird definitions of what these things entail. But one of the things that I found in working with people who have experienced certain types of abuse, like I worked with one lady, and she had been molested by her father, and she'd also been physically abused by her father, and she was really stuck by it. And one of the things I've learned is that it's always the lie that sticks us. And so if we can ask ourselves, what is the lie, spoken or unspoken? But we need to sort of expand our awareness way beyond what most people look from. But anyway, so I asked her, I was like, okay, so she was very victimized by that, having very little success, very little happiness in her life, and she would have things fall apart quite continuously. And I said, so let me ask you a question. I said, is there any strength in going through that? And she went, yeah. And I went, so tell me what you're aware of about that. I said, if we take you out of victim for just a moment, like what strength did you have? What potency did you use? And her eyes got really big and she went, holy shit. And I went, what? She said, I had two younger sisters. And the fact that I was allowing this to be done to me meant he never did it to them. I kept pulling his energy toward me because I knew I could handle it. And I said, so seriously, they never got abused and molested like you did? She went, no. Oh my God, I protected them. And she broke down in tears. And this woman started creating her life from that moment. It was beautiful to watch. And in realizing that, it was like, wow, the lie that we're weak, the lie that we're victims is one of the biggest things that sticks us. And there is a different choice. Now, I'm not saying that applies to everybody who's experienced abuse. Please do not get me wrong. I Nope. I know that that's a very highly charged subject. Having experienced it myself, I do understand rather dynamically. And I'm also saying, in addition to or beyond the story we're telling ourselves, there's some other story, if you will, some other awareness that actually creates possibilities beyond it in almost everybody I've ever worked with. Now, whether we're willing to give up the benefits of that we're getting from particular stories in our life, that may be another story, another,
Yeah.
that's
Another
a question in
episode.
itself. Yeah, that's another episode.
I just was at the Tribeca Film Festival, and probably one of the best documentaries I've ever seen in my life. It's called Rewind, and it's by a young man, Sasha Newlinger. And look, it'll win the Academy Award. It's incredible. It's a look at breaking the cycle of abuse. And one of the really amazing things, a little off topic, but one of the really amazing things is through his process, you saw as he went through and had to go through our legal system as a child, he had to tell his story again and again and again. I mean, I think it was like over like 10 years. Do you know what I mean? And that that act of having to go back and retell the different officers, different prosecutors, different detectives, that was a trauma in and of itself. But there became this beautiful, beautiful practice in, I can't remember the center, but now the child goes in, they give their testimony one time in a room with 3 different camera angles, and everybody can go back and they can watch that playback that never has to go through it again.
Wow. That's
I know.
Cool.
It was, and then the other thing, I know, gave myself goosebumps because, we actually, like you're saying, like we build these lies, right? We make them more and more powerful the more times we tell these stories, and it's just, we make the work much harder than it needs to be. But the other staggering figure for me was the number of people that actually suffer abuse, in this country. It's the majority.
Yeah, truly.
It's the majority. It's really the problem. And then the other thing you were saying about, and I love this modality, and here's what I want to really do. I want to go do it. What I'd like to do is I'd like to go do a class, and I think I want to go do the 4-day, and then we can do a part 2.
Okay, cool. Come,
and I would love to talk about the different things that we're accessed, because I think this is such a needed tool. We've got to find better ways to get into the psyche, mix things up, and find a better way to operate. Because we're all who's really standing in your way? It's like, it's you. I'm standing in my way. There's no cap on it except for what you believe. And I think we've got to be able to access that as a human race if we're going to move forward, because we could look around and see we're a little bit stuck.
Yeah, just a little. What's interesting to me, Freddie, is, when you say that, it's like, and wanting to try it, which I think is awesome. It's like, I look at this and it's interesting because with the tools that I have available, and I've said this with so many people that have been in access, I'm like, I see why so many people don't seem to have very much access to happiness, because they don't have the perspective or the tools that actually allow them to get there. And I look back and I was like, I don't know that without these tools, I would be here anymore or even want to be. And so it's like, there is this really beautiful way that we can live and be in the world, but we've got to see the world for what it really is, and see us for what we really are, and our presence in it, our contribution to it, but also our receiving of it. I mean, we have this beautiful planet, and most of us don't even notice. We'll see how beautiful it is, but we won't receive the energy that it's trying to contribute to us all the time.
Mm-hmm.
We have some different stuff to to be learning and experiencing that I think a lot of us know. Nobody's ever said, hey, here's how we do it.
Yeah. So for myself and for anybody else listening to this episode, is there a website that we can go to really stick our first toe in the water?
Well, you can go to mine, which is a little easier and simpler than the main website, because the main website is like somebody trying to explain to you the universe, because you go there and you're like, whoa, there's a lot going on here. So my website is drdainheer.com, which is DRDAINHEER.com. And there's all kinds of free stuff there too, and invitations there too. The main website is accessconsciousness.com. Good luck spelling consciousness.
Yeah.
And so, and there's a start here button on there also, if people can find that. But you'll go there and you'll be like, because we have about 9,000 facilitators of this work around the world that do different levels of the work. So there's a lot going on there. But our target, it really is to empower people to know that they know, and give them access to the awareness they have that will change anything. And so we have a lot of stuff up there. Even though the website has been redesigned, it's still got a lot of stuff on it.
Amazing. So I always end the podcast with 2 questions. Number 1, I got to ask, and I know you'll kill this answer, what does it mean to you to be beautifully broken?
It means that no matter what you have experienced, it has contributed to the creation of who you are. And if you have experienced it and you're still going and you're still on this planet, you have a level of strength and courage that is beyond anything you've ever imagined. And also, what would it take to access it now?
And my last one is, if you could leave our audience with a question to examine their lives, with something that might stir them into action, a little introspection, what would it be?
If nothing that ever happened to me were wrong, and if nothing I ever chose were wrong, what would that say about what is actually true about me? And what could I choose to create as my future and the future of our planet?
That's beautiful, man. It's been such a pleasure on my end. I'm going to go do some sessions. I'm going to go do the class, and we'll drop in for round 2 sometime in the future.
Freddie, I look forward to it. And
really excited.
Thank you for doing what you do and being who you be.
Thank you very much, sir. Namaste.
Namaste.
This episode of the Beautifully Broken podcast was brought to you by our lovely sponsor, Ampcoil. Guys, a heartfelt thank you for tuning in. If you enjoyed today's show, if you found yourself moved and inspired, I would ask that your next stop today is to drop a review on iTunes. Nothing helps a movement like sharing, downloading, and spreading this message. You can follow me on Freddie Set Go on all social platforms, and throwing a screenshot and a favorite quote of your episode in your Insta story or on Facebook. That is the extra credit, next level engagement I am manifesting. So like these little ripples in a pond, your action helps connect this inspired information with the people who need it most. Till next time, I'm your host, Freddie Kimmel. This is the Beautifully Broken podcast. Namaste.
Here in America, work is in trouble. We've offshored our manufacturing, sent away good jobs, and lost so much ability to make things. American Giant is a company that's pushing back against this tide. They make high-quality clothing, sweatshirts, jeans, dresses, jackets, and so much more, right here in the USA. Visit American-Giant.com and get 20% off your first order when you use code STAPLE20 at checkout. That's 20% off your first order at American-Giant.com, promo code STAPLE20.